Testing 1, 2, 3. This will be the Community Redevelopment Agency Board meeting for February 4th, 2015.
Good evening. I'd like to call to order the Community Redevelopment Agency Board regular meeting, February 4th, 2015, approximately 6 p.m. Please join Vice Chair Montanaro in a moment of silence and pledge.
If all of you people out there will join me in a moment of silence, please. And the pledge?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Hello, David.
Okay, thank you. Moving on, agenda item 3, Executive Director's Report.
Thank you, Chairman. I wanted to just make sure you're all aware of what's coming down at your next meeting. We will be providing your mid-year budget amendments to the board next meeting, as well as the mid-year budget report to tell you where we are in terms of your spending for the year. We will also be presenting your annual report, which is due by statute by March 31st, so we will be presenting that to you for your approval. After that, we're required by the statute to send it to the taxing authorities, which for us is the county and us, and then we'll be satisfying that into the statute. And that's all I have.
One question on update on any of the projects we have. Is that something we're ready for?
Yes, Shell Street went out to bid, so we're waiting on those bids. And as soon as we get those back, we'll be notifying the community, the public of when we'll be starting construction, and we'll let you know as well. Okay. So we should have that information by March 4th.
Great. When do you think, just if everything falls into place, we should be started by the 1st of May?
At the latest, yeah.
Any other questions?
What's the time schedule on that for completion? If it starts at the beginning of May, when?
We were expecting a 6-month construction timeline for that.
Thank you. Any other questions, Richard? Okay, thank you. Moving on to agenda item 4, discuss take action on commercial facade and site improvement grant program.
Thank you, Chairman. This item is a revision of our facade grant program. We've had a facade grant program for a number of years. Previously, the facade grant program was limited to literally just the facades of the buildings. We've done a great job with that program. If you drive down A1A, many of our commercial businesses have accepted that program. They've either redone their signs or they've redone the facades of the buildings. So a lot of improvement has been done, and that's probably, in my opinion, contributed to a lot of the property values rising rapidly in that district. However, we do have a new focus in our community redevelopment plan, which has been stormwater and access management and revising our parking areas. So we've restructured the grant to now include stormwater and parking and limiting facade improvements to only those improvements that address code problems. So we're trying to really focus on the environmental and access management part of, the city, basically, of the commercial lots. So we've restructured that, and as you can go through the first part of it is the purpose, and we list the goal 3 and objective 3.1 and 3.2 of our community redevelopment plan, which talks about providing incentives for redevelopment projects that include access management improvements, stormwater improvements, and improvements to meet current development standards. And we basically show what the limit of the grant is, where it talks about all grant applications must include improvements to address stormwater, access management, or improvements that address non-conforming code issues. And we also clarified that includes landscaping, substandard parking areas, and substandard building features. Grant eligibility, we talk about what the properties must have to be eligible for the grant in the first place, and that includes the location of the property being in the district, that the property must be developed with a building on it, and if the property was vacant, then the property would need to have been vacant for the last 10 years. or have a building on the property within the last 10 years. We're trying to focus this on properties that, really do meet the standard of redevelopment. And then also, properties must have a conforming land use and zoning designation. So those things, if the property owner is wanting to redevelop the property for different use, they need to have those things in line before they apply for the grant. The property must be up to date on all property taxes, and the grant cannot be used to clear up code enforcement liens or current actions, so the property needs to be free of that. And then also, the current or proposed uses must be non-residential. And all improvements must be proposed improvements, so we will not accept an after-the-fact application. And that goes to the point where, if they did it without us, then they don't really need our money. Okay. The application, go ahead.
Okay, on eligibility, it says non-residential. Is mixed use part of this? Or could be part?
Yes, so, the improvements, the current or proposed uses must be non-residential for the grant itself. So it's a commercial facade grant.
Okay.
Yeah, so if you had a mixed use, you could have mixed use like on the second floor, but the proposed use that they're bringing in on the bottom floor, I think, that's a good point. We should probably clarify that.
I was just kind of curious.
Yeah, because you're going to, I think we're going to find that if we, if we're encouraging mixed use, there are a couple of them that are on the A1A corridor now.
I think the intent of this, so we could actually say mixed use, but the intent is to not getting applications for like condominium parking lots, things like that. So that was the intent of clarifying that. So I'll clarify. We can say
we have the non-lawyers building there on A1A just north of CVS. That's a mixed-use commercial building. I mean, they have residences upstairs.
Right. Okay. So we could say all current or proposed uses must be non-residential or mixed use with bottom floor commercial. Mm-hmm. Is that okay?
Yes.
That sounds good.
Okay. So we'll add that as an amendment. All improvements must be proposed. Okay. So we have that.
Hold that for a minute.
Yes, ma'am.
Or mixed use with what?
Or mixed use with bottom floor commercial. Is that acceptable to everyone?
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
Okay. The requirements would be, the eligible improvements would be for architectural and engineering fees, parking lot resurfacing and striping, parking lot reconfigurations, driveway reconfigurations, landscaping and irrigation, exterior building improvements including windows, doors, exterior paint. With the exterior paint, we're requiring that it must be part of a larger redevelopment project, so we don't want to get applications in just for paint. Improvements to comply with the Florida Accessibility Code, better known as ADA, and then exterior architectural treatments including roof parapets. Okay? Stormwater improvements including ponds, subsurface improvements, and treatment trains. We can define treatment trains. I know I got a question from one member about that. A treatment train is a series of treatments. So basically, a lot of times with water quality improvements, one treatment doesn't do it. You have to do a series of treatments, so the water will go through more than one treatment improvement to be clean.
There's, just so we can get by it, that figure that's at the end of the first paragraph, 8,333, there's one too many zeros.
Right. So does everybody understand the eligible? Okay. What's not eligible would be roof improvements themselves. So if somebody needed to redo their roof, this grant would not assist them with that. Okay, so maintenance, general maintenance things are not included. Interior improvement, go ahead.
Parking lot resurfacing and striping. Are we paying for somebody to paint their blacktop black and then stripe it?
Right.
Okay, I won't say anything right now, but I'd like, when we do things like that, Never mind, I'm not going to say anything else.
Well, the intent of that is, is basically, we've allowed people to bring in, the renovations of the exterior of the building, and sometimes you have these beautiful buildings now, and then you look at the parking lot and you're like, this is pretty bad. And I think parking lots, and many times for property owners, are overwhelming to them because it's a different animal when it comes to maintenance. A lot of people know what to do about their buildings, but they don't really know what to do about their parking lots. And, this would assist in that.
Well, the only, I guess the question I would have is, there are different applications that you can put on parking lots. Some hold up better than others, and, without us knowing what it is or who it is, and we could be paying top dollar for what we think is a good product, and we could be getting nothing as far as the product goes.
I think what you're looking at, one of the things I was kind of going to define resurfacing.
Yeah.
Kind of like you said, resurfacing, does that mean we're going to repave, put asphalt down, or is someone just going to come with black spray paint and just spray paint it black?
And
Well, I
to me,
think each parking lot would have different needs, so when they bring in their application, they'll define all that and then provide you with 2 quotes. So you'd be approving these in the end, and they'll all come to you for approval, so you'd be able to ask those questions, is this the appropriate, method that you're using, and that's what staff will, go through that with them as well. What they're proposing may not be necessary, or what they're proposing may not be enough. So those are all things that we can talk with the applicant about, during each individual application. So we also wouldn't want to pay for interior improvements. So if somebody needed to renovate the interior of their business, that would not be eligible. And then also attorney's fees. Sorry, Cliff, but,
God bless you.
if there's any reason for an applicant to go get an attorney for this, then we definitely would not be paying for it. And, so that's one of the things we just wanted to make sure. This grant would provide up to $50,000 with a 2-to-1 match. In my experience, I've found that this is very helpful when you do a 2-to-1 match, because basically, especially with something very expensive like parking lots and stormwater, you actually are asking them to invest quite a bit of money, but you're also providing one big incentive to get them to participate, which is meaning that you're going to pay for 2/3 of the project. So this actually helps a lot when you're doing very expensive things like stormwater and parking lots, when they're, I think this is going to be, you'll see this grant applied to pretty large construction project. So this would be a big incentive for them. And I've found that when you're looking at infrastructure and things like historic buildings, which we don't have that issue here, but in other cities, they're very expensive to renovate. And when we do a 2-to-1 match, that gets people's ears perk up and say, okay, now this is an opportunity. So that's what we want to do, is we want to encourage the participation. And we may get to a point later in the program where we realize, okay, we don't really have to do a 2-to-1 match. Now let's change it to a 50-50. But I think in the onset of the program, a 2-to-1 match would assist in getting people to participate. So to give you an example, we provided a cost of $25,000. The city would contribute $16,667, and the required match would be $8,333. We would require that all projects meet the city's land development regulations, CRA architectural requirements, unless granted a variance by the board, by the BOA. That might happen quite a bit. We are in a redevelopment area. Some of the lots are small. Our codes haven't really been updated to accommodate those. So you may see a grant application come in, be placed on hold while somebody gets the appropriate variances for their project. Okay? The entire grant application has to be eligible projects. So basically, in my experience, I've seen people want to come in and say, okay, I want to do, the facade, but that's only going to cost, $7,000, but I'm also going to be doing the interior of my building. Can I use that as the match? And the answer is no. The whole project must be eligible. So they may be doing other things to their building, But our grant's not going to apply to anything, and the match requirements are not going to apply to anything but eligible improvements. So that makes sure that our dollars are spent in the intent of the program and not, being leveraged for some other reason, okay? The applicant must provide 2 quotes for the proposed work by 2 different licensed contractors. And this is important because a lot of CRAs require 3. In my experience, that is an absolute nightmare for an applicant to get 3 quotes. It's hard for me to get 3 quotes for my personal contracting work at my house. So trying to get them to do that, especially for something they're not used to, like a stormwater project or, a parking lot repaving, things like that, that's very difficult for them to do. But we will require 2, because obviously we have to make sure that they're getting the best price. In some cases, we can actually help them put together their bids, because if it's a construction application, we can generally help them do that. In this case, we do have instances where you have a property that has more than 1 unit, and they're bigger properties, and they're like, well, the little Dunkin' Donuts was eligible for $50,000, but my property is 4 times the size. Can I get more? And the answer would be yes. So basically what we did was we provided the formula where every property is eligible for up to $50,000, and if you have a multi-tenant building, you'll be eligible for an additional $5,000 for each unit. So we thought that was a fair way to do that. We may get down the line and say, that's unfair, I want to change that, but at the initial onset, in my opinion, it's worked out well in previous areas that I've worked in to have that kind of formula.
So we're saying that one of the tenants would get $50,000, but the other 2 tenants would only get $5,000.
It's the property owner, the property would get $50,000. And if they had a multi-unit building, they would be eligible for $5,000 more for each unit they had, because basically you're giving the grant to the property, not to the tenant. So, and it's very rare when a tenant just going to paint the one little section of their building, and we probably would discourage that.
So you're talking about one owner
Yes.
for a 3-unit?
Correct.
Oh, okay.
But because the property is bigger, we're trying to give them some more funds. We're trying to acknowledge that it's a bigger property. So, $50,000, is it fair to limit them to $50,000 and then give somebody with a property that's, a quarter of the size also $50,000? Maybe we try to figure out a way to make it, give them a little.
So using that example would be just what you just said. You have Dunkin' Donuts at one place, now you got Publix next
Right.
door, and Publix has multiple units by one owner. And that's where you were saying, well, the guy would say Dunkin' Donuts gets $50,000, but obviously I'm much bigger than them. Then you say, well, if he has 10 units, he could get $50,000 and $5,000 for each
Right.
additional unit in that whole big property if he was going to do the whole property. Is that
Correct.
what we're saying?
Yes.
And where did you come up with $5,000?
That's just been my experience, and, like, if you look at the cost of resurfacing or redoing a stormwater project or a parking lot project for a property that's small, and that's $50,000, you add, like you do, you can add up all the units in Publix Plaza and multiply it by that 5, and you probably come up with a very similar size grant, for that size property. So it's just kind of a ratio that goes out. And you also have the same issue, like if you have a property that goes up in units, so they have, a smaller lot, but they have more units that go up, well, they're probably going to put their stormwater underground, and that's expensive. So you're accounting for that they have a smaller, squished up property, and they're trying to get their stormwater underground, and they have a lot of units on there, and actually that's the kind of dense development that we're trying to encourage. That's, so you're kind of rewarding them for that. So you're basically giving properties that have more land and more units more money because they have more issues.
I have a question. We're probably not going to have a lot of money that, we're going to be seeing to go into these type projects, depending on how much we deem we want to set into them. And is it our intention to help the smaller businesses because when you mention Publix,
Right.
and you mention that, do we want to put something in here that basically says, we are looking at business properties that are under X number of thousand square feet? Because it would not, if we had a pool of money together and that plaza came in and said, this is what we want to do, how do we differentiate between the new age people that own the Publix Plaza and someone who owns where Black's restaurant is, or where the plaza that's north of where the old Kentucky Fried Chicken used to be, that there has 5 or 6 units in there. I think the intent is to help the littler businesses.
I wouldn't.
I have a concern just from this, is all of them pay into the CRA.
Yes.
And can you distinguish and say, this person can't do it because they're too big, but they put money into it too? Does everybody get the free shot?
Okay, let me address this if I can. First of all, your point is very good about that. It is that everybody's paying in. You're using TIF dollars to fund the grants and all that. So that's correct. But it all depends on how you look at it. Could you set up a financial criterion for an applicant? You could, and it would probably be enforceable. But it really does depend on how you want to look at it, because for most people who do CRAs, they don't really care how much money the party is that comes in to do the redevelopment. They just want the redevelopment. And so if that's what they have to do to incentivize them to come in, whether it's Publix or Joe Smith on the corner, the bottom line is, I don't look at that ugly building. And if I can give you a grant to fix it, and you'll fix it, golden. And so it's all about how you look at it. If you say, well, I really want to help the big guy, I don't want to help the little guy, that's fine, but the big guy may not do anything unless you incentivize him. So it's about creating incentive to get something better looking there than what you have there now, not about how much money they have. You could set up a needs test or a financial criterion component to it if you chose to, but then you create what are they going to provide me financial statements? Who's going to review them? How we're going to get proof that they don't have means, and a whole lot of other things. And again, you can do that. But most of the time when you're talking about a CRA, and this is a smaller area, obviously, but for example, I'll use Maitland, which is one of it's not the largest city I represent, but it's a good example. We don't care if we got millionaires coming in there. If they'll come in and redevelop downtown, whatever we got, good. Just come do it, because we want them in there.
Two, I think, we are the final vote, right, when this comes to us. So we're the final vote. And I think if you look around and look at your situation like the Publix's, they just redid their building. So I think there's a smaller percent in our town of the very big plaza doing it because they just did it not too long ago. And I think we would probably, just percentage-wise, get the smaller business owner to do it. And again, we got that vote to pick and choose which one we feel is the one we want to do.
It
So-
also depends on your funding too. So we're only funding 50,000 right now. You may get 4 applications and go, man, they're all great. It would be such a big difference if we could fund them all. And you may do a plan amendment and reprioritize your funding, so that may come in front of you. But right now you're only funded for 50,000. And I don't, honestly, we're going to be actively going out to try to get people to participate in the program. I don't see people going, ooh, a flood of applications right now. But this program is intended to get people who are just kind of riding they're just trying to decide whether they want to invest or not, and get them to tip over into, yes, they want to do it, because of this application.
So this would be beneficial to someone who has like a non-conforming lot, that whether they don't meet stormwater, they don't meet parking, there's different things that we can do to help them
Right.
develop that property by utilizing this grant that might put their stormwater underground or use some of the denitrification stuff on their property.
Right.
So this benefits pretty much everybody that's in the commercial district in some form or another.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah. And that's, we wanted to make sure that we recognized on page 4, you'll see where we wrote, in submitting this grant application, the applicant recognizes that any grant award depends on the eligibility of funding and prioritization with other grant applications. So we would always try to do first come, first serve, put them in order as they come in, and that means complete application. So somebody just submitting an idea isn't an application. An application is, the bids, all of the things that go along with the requirements to submit, and that would put them in the queue. I've never really had an issue with people saying, not getting funding, honestly, because it is a hard thing for them to put together, with these applications. And these projects are a lot bigger than painting a building and putting shutters on. So I don't see us getting a flood of applications, quite frankly. I see us going out and knowing, our community, knowing that the property owners out there that are looking to do something because they have come in and talked to us about, hey, can I do this, or hey, can I do that? And saying, hey, we have this available, why don't we try to put together a project? I see us doing that more than people coming in and flooding us with applications at this point. So.
But just a couple more questions. And I know that that's the way this should go, but let's just say, for example, is there a cutoff? If we get 100 applications and they're all worth $50,000, are we good?
No, because you have an eligibility of funding of $50,000 right now. So you fund the first one.
and that's it?
Yeah, unless you want to do a plan amendment and shift your priorities from a different project to this.
Because every year we're going to put X number of dollars
Correct.
into this program. And if that X number of dollars is gone, we either say it's over or we...
Yeah, you have to wait till next year. Some people wait, some people don't,
Okay, and just one other thing, and I know we were talking about, you just said the word shutters. Is hurricane shutters considered an improvement? Because you're saying windows and exterior and stuff like that. As a part of that guy says, yes, I want to put hurricane shutters on all my windows.
Yes, but I don't know if that would be considered a non-conforming part of the property. It'd have to be specific to that property. So if somebody came in and they are required to have so many exits and open windows for the type of use they have, which is possible. Like, for example, someone, wants to come in and convert a office building to a charter school. The windows have to open. That's a code requirement. So that may be what, this grant could fund that, and that might be, they might want to use that type of window, So that's really what we're trying to do, is limit it to, code compliance, because right now we know we've got our buildings pretty much in order. We have, a lot of them are done. So we're trying to get people to kind of stay off the building side and focus on the things that our plan has really focused on, which is stormwater and parking and really the ground improvements, site improvements.
On the stormwater end of it, does that help us towards our points on our stormwater?
No, not for the city, but it does help obviously the lagoon, yeah.
Okay. Even though those properties could drain now into our streets and
we don't get any credit.
We still don't get credit.
Yeah, we don't get credit for it, no.
Okay.
When you look at where the Dairy Queen was, a lot of the issues they had was trying to put the same footprint on there and meet the St. Johns River water and parking requirements. They couldn't meet the stormwater requirements.
It's very difficult.
Right, but I know that. My point was, if we're given this money, does it help us also in the way for credits, because you are taking that stormwater off the streets and off of the lagoon, and it's within our city, so I was just curious if it did help us at all. Okay.
When getting back to the windows you were talking about, the question that Steve asked was storm shutters. I don't think storm shutters and windows are the same thing. Why would we pay for somebody to put storm shutters up that may not even be there unless there's a storm? And if
I'm sorry, I was thinking of like...
Well, because you have them like those accordion types. So say like a guy's going to come in and he's going to redo the whole front of his building. New stucco, brand new windows, brand new doors. He's going to paint. He's going to, change it architecturally. And then he says, and I'm going to put permanent accordion hurricane shutters to cover those brand-new windows that I'm putting in there. Well, that could be thousands of dollars in those accordion shutters. That's what I'm saying. So is that
This
considered?
wouldn't be.
Yeah, I don't think that would.
Because
That's why I just wanted to
not
make
a-
sure that.
Yeah, that's not a code requirement. It would be a requirement for somebody to have, a certain type of window with different
Right.
uses, but storm shutters are not a
Okay.
code requirement. So anyway, then we go down the application checklist, and we will create an application upon your approval, and post it to our website. We will likely probably send out a copy of the grant, and a letter inviting participants from the A1A corridor and the South Patrick corridor, just to make sure the property owners are aware, and I'll probably put a notification on Facebook, so business owners know that this is out there. But we will require a complete application, the deed to the property, as well as completed and signed owner's authorization form. So many times you'll have a lease, sometimes property owners lease the entire property. So if they want to do those improvements, they need to get, obviously, the owner's approval, and we would do that with the owner's authorization form. And then we require 2 quotes from 2 different licensed contractors, and then schematics describing the work to be performed, or preliminary site and building plans. And then we just require them to provide, if they have bigger plans, to provide copies for all of the people that would be looking at this, and then a timeline for the proposed work. And this is a reimbursement grant, so they would have to put the money up first. We don't want to give money first and then not get the improvement. So we would, basically, they would, from an administrative standpoint, they would do the work, submit the receipts to us in the terms of the final. So you may approve a grant up to $50,000 if they provide you some work estimates, but if the actual costs come in at $47,000, then that's how the grant reimbursement would be worked out. It would be on the exact amount that we spent, or they spent on their work. So that's really it. It's,
I want you to go back to the paragraph on page 4 that starts in submitting this grant application. Look at the last sentence. It says, "It is expected that the applicant attend both public meetings." Is it expected or is it required?
we just say expected. So sometimes applicants will send a representation, somebody that represents them, if they can't be here for any reason, for whatever reason. So, yeah. So we would ask them to, we expect them to, but I don't think we can require them to. And I don't think it's wise to do that.
All right, since there's, Mr. Schechter, any comments on this at this time?
No.
Okay, thank you. So I have a motion? Okay.
I knew it.
Let me check your chair, the advisory board. One of the things we're looking at in the long term, looking at different code things, and what you said about the first floor commercial is true today. You're probably going to hear us at some point want to expand that to give more options, to make it more accessible to people. It could be 2 different buildings in the same piece of property, doesn't one over the other one. We're looking at those things to be more incentivize people to do things. So you may hear that later, but today that's what the code says. So it's correct what you said. I just want to give you a heads up that we're trying to expand the thought process, so just a heads up.
Thank you.
We could just say, that's a good point, though, because you might have somebody who has a commercial building in the front and a residential in the back, so we don't want to, we don't want to say that it's, everything on the bottom floor has to be commercial, so I don't want it to be interpreted that. But what we want to make sure is that there is a commercial use on the property, because what we're trying to avoid is, like, again, like I said, like because we do get condominium owners like, hey, y'all want to help us with our fence, stuff like that, but we can't do that, and that's not really considered redevelopment. So, so that's what we want to make sure is that when, people look at this, they understand the intent. So we might want to say, let me read this again, make sure everybody's on board. All current or proposed uses must be non-residential or mixed use with non-residential on the, I'm on page 2. I'm trying to think of a way to say that.
We're saying like commercial frontage, or frontage must be commercial, or 'Cause that's really what you're trying to say, is if it's facing A1A, for example, you want that to be the commercial part,
Yeah, the frontage part.
so the frontage part of it.
Or we
Needs
could
to be
say, all current or proposed uses must be non-residential or mixed use with a non-residential use on the first floor.
Well, you don't want to say the
What was
first floor
wrong with
because,
where you had it?
Because there may be there may be residential on the first floor,
In the back.
but we just want to make sure that, the non-residential, that there is non-residential on the property.
Frankly, I don't see anything wrong with the sentence the way it was.
Okay.
All current or proposed uses must be non-residential. Even if it is mixed use and you've got a residential component, that sentence makes it clear to me that you can't give one of these grants for the residential portion. So I don't see where that sentence needs modifying.
Do you really feel that you would read that and say that the grant would still be available to the downstairs being commercial, but not upstairs?
Yeah, because if the upstairs is residential, then it's only going to apply to the downstairs commercial. I mean, it says must be non-residential.
But somebody wouldn't, you think of that as the building in its entirety?
Yeah.
I mean, that's, what I don't want to happen is someone come and say, that building is residential, too. I mean, it's not just commercial.
Well, then say all current or proposed uses must be commercial, must be for commercial purposes.
Okay.
You could just say all current or proposed uses must be non-residential or mixed use, period.
yeah, I mean, if you put mixed use in there, then it basically lets you know that there's a commercial element to the building and there's a residential element to the building, and the improvements should go to the commercial end of the building. Is that kind of what we're looking at? But I mean, what happens if there's a building with commercial
How about
on the
this?
bottom,
How
there's a
about-
residence behind the commercial, and there's residences upstairs, and they want to use a facade grant to paint the building?
Right. How about this? All properties, instead, we just say all properties must have a commercial use.
Well, that's,
Is that better?
well, no, and it's not, because it depends on, think about it, how many home-based businesses we got right now? I mean, I got an office in my bedroom. I'd love y'all to come fix that for me. If I just move it down here, I'll haul it on a trailer.
That's
Please,
true, yeah.
come on down. What you want to do is you're trying to say that the money should be spent on improvements that go to the commercial part of the building, if there's a commercial part.
No, I
So if
think we're
there's a-
saying that even in a mixed use that they can apply it to the whole building, but it's
What I'm saying is, you're not wanting them to take the money and say, here's my proposed improvement. You want an exterior, and the upstairs is where they'd love a nice bay window, and so they're going to use that's a part of the facade. It happens to be the top of the building, and it has a commercial on the bottom, but that's where I'm going to spend the money. Isn't that what you want to do?
In other words, you say you don't spend it on the penthouse,
Yeah, right, exactly.
because,
Well, you could have,
All current or proposed uses must be for commercial property.
well, let's look at this and say let's take the non-lawyer building there. And all of a sudden, they come in with a facade grant that basically changes the front of the building and puts a porch on the front upstairs. So now the people that are upstairs living in the residential units have a porch that they can sit
Well,
out
they
and look at
can't
the ocean.
use the grant unless it's fixing a code problem. So we don't require porches,
Okay.
you know what I mean? So unless they're fixing a code problem, they can't use the grant for the building.
Well, I'm trying to think if there's something that can be done.
I mean, but,
That's
you may have a
code-oriented.
residential up top and they may have, a non-conforming roof parapet that they want to fix. And we want them to be able to do that,
But you'd want that.
Yeah.
What do you think of the way it is right now?
The current or proposed uses must be non-residential, and I'm assuming that means the use of the property, whatever the building is. That's how I read that. But what I'm concerned about is the guy says, okay, well, yeah, I'm bringing, my use is not commercial. Yeah, I have a place that I stay in above it, but my bottom is an art studio, for example. then that solves that question, but it doesn't solve the next question, well, where's the money going to be spent? And that's kind of the second part of the equation. That's why I kind of focused there. I didn't think it was too bad to have all current and proposed uses must be non-residential or mixed use with bottom floor commercial, because that clarifies that even if there's a residential component, they can still come in and apply. But I'm assuming that the focus that you're really looking for is that the money be spent on something that has a commercial value as opposed to a pure residential
Right.
improvement.
So we could just leave it as bottom floor commercial, and if there's an issue, we can certainly just come back and amend the code, or amend the program. So if we just leave it at, all current or proposed uses must be non-residential or mixed use with bottom floor commercial. Is that okay?
I think
That
it's
gets
good.
you to where, of course, then you will look, I mean, what you've got set up is it comes here for approval, right?
Right.
So I think that's probably the best place to vet that issue, but wait a minute now, we love you, but that bay window up there, that's not doing anything for us.
Right.
Okay? It's not a new sign for Joe's Hot Dogs or Art Studio or whatever it is. It's just an improvement to the residential. It doesn't really do anything for what we're trying to accomplish here. Sorry, no bueno. And that's how I would deal with it.
Yeah.
Okay.
That's why it's very important that you have a non-administrative approval process for these types of things, because they have to be vetted, pretty openly for the public to trust it,
Do I have a motion?
Before we do that, I have, hang on. I have editorial heartburn.
Okay.
On every page, and so I'd like to make a motion to approve the commercial facade and site improvement grant program with editorial corrections, and I would like the board to allow me to get the digital file of this and make those corrections on here. So I also want to change the terminology so that it reflects what we're going to be approving with the board handbook. We need to get all of these things on the same page.
That's fine. I have a motion by Board Member Gott, and do I have a second?
Second.
Second by Vice Chair Montanaro. Any further discussion? Hearing none. Lenore?
Mark Reimer.
Yes.
Steve Osborne.
Yes.
Donald Montanaro.
Yes.
Lorraine Gott.
Yes.
Chairman Patino.
Yes, motion passes. Thank you. And Lorraine, thank you for tidying it up. Okay. Next, agenda item 5, board member comments. Anybody have any comments? Okay.
Other than I apologize for being late, folks. It could not be helped, but I apologize. That's all I have. That's enough. That's enough.
All right. Do I have a motion to adopt the minutes for December 3rd, 2014?
As submitted, so moved.
I have a motion by Board Member Gott, second by Board Member Brimer. Any further discussion? Hearing none. Lenore?
Steve Osborne.
Yes.
Donald Montanaro.
Yes.
Mark Reimer.
Yes.
Lorraine Gott.
Yes.
Chairman Patino.
Yes, motion carries. Any further business?
Yeah, Mark, do you want us to repeat the discussion for you that we...
I'm up for it if you guys are.
Hearing no further business, meeting's adjourned, and anybody need we have 5 minutes, and then we will do our work.